Hi, I'm Dean Paarman. I'm the Director of South African Operations for Balance, and I'm sitting here on a brand new 442 with Phil Berman, the founder of Balance Catamarans, which has been going since 2013.
Yeah.
Well done, Phil.
Thank you.
Me being based here in South Africa, I have a unique position to see every balance boat come out of the factory and into the water. And I also get to meet all the owners that come through here. And through these interactions, we have a lot of great conversations over dinner, over coffee. And one of those conversations that comes up is just the design of these boats, that they work. And something that we already know, balance is born of that balance between performance and livability. But when people get here and they get to go demo sail and test sail for the first time, oh man, it's all about the performance. So we start talking about, what can we do and how does this work? I want to talk a little bit about that today, what gets discussed and more into the philosophy of the design behind these boats. You're the brains and the architect behind that design. And I'd really just like to hear the base philosophy of it. Let's go through some of the features that really make a balance a balance. There's one standout feature which has been there since the beginning, a benchmark of innovation for balance, and that is of course the VersaHelm. What's the history of it? Because we know what it is. We can touch on that again if somebody doesn't know. But what's the history and what's the thinking behind it? And how did this come together?
When we talk about designing for performance, there's the performance of making the boat go fast. That's performance in one sense. But there's also performance is how easy is it to sail the boat, to operate the boat? How functional is it to operate the boat? What can you do to simplify maintenance, handling, all those things? So when I think about designing for performance, performance is not just how fast the boat goes, but how it works. So the VersaHelm idea came to me. I was doing a sea trial of a big production cat off Palm Beach, and they're just on the boat, and I said, gee, this is nice to have this wheel here, but I'm blind over here, and gee, how come you have to have two wheels and all this equipment? And I'd sailed on forward cockpit boats, which I didn't think was an ideal place to be in cold weather, and you can't see the sails. And I'd sailed on dual helm boats, and I'd sailed on single helm boats, and I'd sailed on every type of catamaran. And I just kept thinking to myself, there's got to be a way to simplify this and make this really work. There have been pivoting helms around. You'd see them, especially in monohulls, like they would have one on each side and they'd pivot out a little bit. But nobody had actually had a helm that pivoted 90 degrees down and 90 degrees up. And for me, the idea was, well, look, if we can get two helm stations with one wheel, and when we are operating in an up helm station, we have sight lines that are incredible from up top. But when the wheel is down, we can have sight lines that are incredible. And we can operate the boat, do all the reefing and all the management almost single-handedly in the upper helm. That's a winner, okay? And particularly if you're sailing the boat in inclement weather when it's raining and that sort of thing, and you can drop that helm down, but you've got to have that visibility looking through the boat.
Yeah.
Sightlines are one of the biggest reasons why you have accidents in yachting, like the Coast Guard in the United States has done study after study. And so that was very important. And getting those sightlines means that you've got to get that wheel as close as possible to the bulkhead of the salon when it opens up. And you can only be looking through one pane of windows. Whatever's in front of that down helm has to either go away to the side or it has to go up, so that you're only looking through one set of glass windows.
Yep.
Glass windows are also an important part of increasing the visibility. So that's kind of how the VersaHelm came about. It works great. I always laugh that years ago, it's 4 years ago, we were at the Cannes boat show in Europe, and we had to bring our boat in to the slip. And before boat shows, everybody has to set up two days before the show, right? It was pouring rain. I mean, pouring rain. And we had a time when we had to bring in our boat, and we got the down helm, and we come in, and you can dock the boat from down, no problem. And we brought our boat in, and we're looking around at the other catamarans, and there's these guys on these fly bridges, and they've got slickers on, and they're soaking
and
wet.
6 people all shouting.
And they've got the dual helm boats, and they're soaking and they're wet. And just realizing that if we only did boat shows during rain and people were forced to come and they came on a balance, they would buy a balance. Like, because there are days when you have to pilot the boat in the cold and in the rain. And why do you have to be dressed up in all this yachting apparel, right? You can be down below with a nice sweater on and be comfortable and have a cup of coffee, you know. So that was the, you know, the instigation of that VersaHelm. And I will say, you know, that you nicely say that I'm the brains of Balance, but I'm not the entire brains of Balance. Balance is the brains of a lot of people.
Of course, of course.
And the interesting thing about the VersaHelm was that it was my idea, and we worked on it. And Anton did initial drawings, and then your uncle Jonathan Paarman screwed around with it. And,
yeah.
And it was a lot of iterations, and then we've evolved it, you know, over the years. And that's really, I think, collaboration is like at the heart of getting anything done. Like I'm a very democratic person in the sense that I love to hear ideas. Who, what do you think? Can we do this better? Even just yesterday, we were working on the 502, and Mark Delaney, the head of production and owner of Balance Catamarans Cape Town, he came up with a great idea for what might be a small thing to some people, but I said, brilliant, do it.
Yeah.
Right? So there's just, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. Well, that's, I'm glad you mentioned also that pivoting helms did exist before we, you know, created the VersaHelm, because I've seen that in a comment or two, because we, you know, we're very proud of it, and we claim that pride, and people are like, oh, you're not the first. We're not claiming to be the first pivoting helm. We are the VersaHelm. And your summary of the sight lines, I mean, I can attest to it on the last passage I did. We spend, at nighttime especially, you spend, anytime it's a nice night, you're on top anyway, because you want to look at the stars, and you're up there and you're just enjoying the breeze on your face. But we had a few rainy nights, and it's just so nice to be able to come down and feel reassured that you do have the sight lines.
You know, and sit watch. Yeah. You know, sit watch down below.
A nice little red hue with somebody sleeping here.
Somebody
you feel
sleeping
safe.
Right here.
And you've got that 360 view all the way around. So I know we get up and, you know, walk to the back just to have a look, but you don't have to. You can see from there. So that's what we talk about with the VersaHelm. It's not just the pivot. It's really, it's the whole thing.
And it is a 90-degree pivot. So it's a big pivot, right?
Yeah.
It really comes
And
down.
you have that middle section where you sometimes you sit at the bottom. You have it just out the way. You've got a hand on it, so that if you need to grab it, but you have that space in front of you. So you can put your feet up. You can, you know, keep track of the screens there if you want.
When it's really also nice is when you're actually having to motor in cold and you're piloting the boat. Like if you're in Maine and there's crab pots everywhere and it's cold and there's no wind and you're trying to come up a channel, and you can adjust the throttle and steer at the same time, right? That becomes, you know, a real advantage. You know, to hear other people say that we copied or whatever. No, we didn't copy anybody. We just found a way to use a pivoting helm in the most ideal manner.
Let's move from the steering to what I'm going to call the engine of the boat. And I'm not talking about the Yanmas here. I'm talking about the big engine that catches the wind.
The engine above the deck.
That's the one.
Is how they describe it.
Because it's a performance catamaran, the idea is that these are being used most of the time. Right? That's built into the idea of a performance catamaran, as far as my experience has been so far.
Use the engines as little as possible.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the design of the sail and the features that make, again, a balance. And let's start at the cockpit, where we have all the lines coming. We have the winches right there. It really is designed to be single-handed or short-handed sail.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll say single-handed. You know, if you have the autopilot going, you can reef yourself if you need to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's no problem. It's always nice to do it with two people. It's a better experience, but it's possible. And I think and it's easy to do alone.
Yeah.
How did that cockpit setup or that helm setup?
Well, you know, it ties back to the VersaHelm in a lot of ways, because the idea was in that upper helm station, you've got your stoppers, you've got your reefing lines, you've got your halyard, main halyard, you've got your self-tending jib sheet, you've got your topping lift, you've got, you know, your two main sheets. So the idea was, how do we keep it all up here, ergonomically functional? The other thing that I'm a bugaboo about is, while it may seem very nautical to go to the Mystic Seaport Museum not far from my house in Connecticut and talk about old school sailing and coiling lines and all that kind of stuff, I really like line boxes. I like to just put lines in boxes, okay? Now you look at a Balance Catamaran, you're going to see line boxes for the Daggerboard lines and aft sheets under on the steps. You can just stuff the lines in. Up at the top, you've got 3 line boxes. You stuff those lines in. And on the foredeck, you've got line boxes. So that's a kind of important for me. I call it the spaghetti reduction factor. You know, that's a part of it. A lot of people ask sort of like, well, why did you elect to have a self-tending jib as opposed to a deck sheeting Genoa on the boat? If you keep the luff height, you know, high on a jib and have a blade, you can really carry the sail in close and point really high. A blade jib in stronger winds is actually more functional than a Genoa. But the biggest thing is that it makes sailing the boat when you're out short-handed, especially if you're out day sailing and whatever, you just turn the wheel over and the jib is just going back and forth, as you know.
It's an absolute pleasure.
It's an absolute pleasure. But in all things, there's trade-offs. Okay, so in really light air, when you're sailing to windward, you're a little underpowered. Like you wouldn't mind having a little bit more sail if you want to go a little faster to windward in that range from, should we say, like 8 and maybe 11 knots of wind. Okay, you'd like to have some more power, and that's why we offer a screecher that you can sheet off the end of the bowsprit, and we have what we call an upwind screecher that sheets a little bit inside, and you can use that sail in those light air wind ranges to go better to windward, and then you can use that sail as you're reaching and into higher and higher wind ranges. It was a decision I made. It's important for balance. And the other one was the A-frame main sheet system. To me, I just think it's so superior because you don't have a traveler, so you don't have to operate a traveler or even with a line driver. And when you have a traveler system, the main is always in an up-down position. Okay, you can't really pull down on one side of the sail or the other. And when you're sailing off the wind, you have to attach a preventer of some sort out on the outside rail, or else the boom is banging around all the time. So you have to attach it, detach it. You have to, you know, in most situations on the Balance, and you could speak from your own experience from your most recent passage, off the wind, you don't necessarily have to detach the 2 main sheets on the middle one, and then put it on the outside. For most day conditions, you just pull the sail out as far as you can get it. You don't need to detach it and put it out on the outside.
Yeah.
So that is a preventer system. But with the A-frame, your sail is always prevented.
Yeah, well, you've got that. You can work with the sail in that 3D space, and you've got the topping lift additionally if you want, just to, you know, to help you too. On our passage, we did move it over once,
just
because
once.
we wanted to try it, and we didn't really do it again. We opted, it was a choice to sail hotter angles.
That's right. Kurt likes to sail at hotter angles. And that's an interesting
We were going
topic,
fast the whole time, and it was great for Catherine and me to just like really experience going faster all the time like that. For that reason, I must admit, at night, we went back to the jib most times because we had a lot of wind, and it felt safe to have a sail that you can furl away quickly by yourself.
Yeah.
That you can, if you need to tack or change direction, you can do it by yourself. So having that self-tending jib alone at night on passage with lots of wind,
or a big screecher. So a lot of people now are getting a what I call a downwind screecher. It's a slightly lighter cloth. It's a much larger sail, and you can just furl it and furl it in and out. And I think for most couples, short-handed operations, it's a lot easier than using a spinnaker and a sock. Although some people also get furling asymmetrical spinnakers. But getting back to this sort of, you know, design for performance, being able to get great sail shape, manage all the sails single-handedly is an important part of what we're about at Balance.
Yeah.
And I know that from having my own 482, I could sail that boat by myself. And now getting a 502 with my friends, Joe and Tina, same thing. I know I could single-hand that boat. And that's just really, you know, really important.
It really is. Yeah. And there's 2 sides. You can opt to, as I just said earlier, to push the boat faster, especially when you want to be racy, you can. Yeah. And when it's not racy, when you're just on passage and you're just cruising, you're safe. Right? So you have that balance between safety and performance, if I can put it that way.
That's super Good point. Safety is everything, right? That's the number one is safety, and being able to quickly reef the sails.
Yeah.
Is obviously super important. Yeah. So,
or if an autopilot does fail and you're in control immediately. And what I'm also impressed about by Balance is that you have all your lines coming straight at your winches.
Yeah.
You don't have to go around corners and that. And I think that's something that you've also worked on, right?
Yeah. So that's anytime you can reduce friction and have lines run straight, that's great, right? It makes your winches more effective. The lines run more free. There's over the years, like every boat is like a test platform. Like when I think about efforts that we've made on the design of the new 464 and the new 502, and now also the new 540, it's the collective experience that we've had with these boats and all the feedback we get from owners that we're always tweaking, we could make this easier, we could do this better. What I think is interesting about our balances is that companies that are ginned up about calling themselves high performance, you go on their boats and there's just clusters of lines and dual helms and all these rigging systems, and you look at it, and yet as simple as these boats are to sail, we beat them. We beat them in the races. We beat them in the Cape de Rio race. We beat them in the Arc Rally. And these are boats that are not being sailed by professionals.
Of course, yeah.
And they're fast. These boats go, and they're not hard to sail. And that is just the beauty. And speaking of safety, I do think that a boat that makes faster passages reduces your exposure to bad weather. Which of course, obviously is going to make your boat safer. But also, if you have good weather routing on your boat, and everyone does now, you see something coming, you stop, turn left, turn right, speed up. I was talking to Darren and Amanda on Outer Passage, and they're just about, I think they left actually from Bermuda to Newport, Rhode Island, and they've got guests on the boat when they're doing training. Well, they're caught between two tropical systems, really, in a way. And so they're just waiting for this little weather window, and they know it's going to be, 3 days to get there. And you could see the weather, so hey, I'm not going sailing today, or I'm stopping, right? So that really helps safety a lot. And that's true of all boats today, just having that great access to weather forecasting, but the ability to be able to sail quickly is a safety factor.
Correct, exactly, yeah. And I like the way that we've framed that, is that you have that choice to go fast because the boat can go fast. It can race, right? It can keep up with the racers. But at the same time, another aspect of performance sailing is going fast in light winds. So I'm going to transition to a different chapter here is what makes the Balance, and kind of leading to the hull shape design here. What about the Balance makes it so fast in light wind?
To go fast in light air, you have to have good hull fineness ratio, okay? And the longer the boat and the narrower you keep the hulls, the more easily driven it is, the more easily it goes through the water. This is the fact. You're trying to reduce skin friction, which under the water, and to have a sharp entry, right? Like a swimmer, the longer you can get your shoulders out, the more reach you have and the more slivery you are. And that's true with cats, which touches on the subject of how we're going to talk later about how you build for performance.
Yes.
Well, you have to figure out first, what kind of stuff are people going to put on the boat? Because you have to displace that stuff. And then you have to figure out what materials you're going to use to lighten the boat. And then you have to figure out how much storage capacity you want on the boat to make it livable, because you're trying to balance out those elements, right? How you construct the boat, which impacts the cost of the boat and the rigidity of the boat. But light air performance it's important to have a lot of sail area. On any performance-oriented boat, you'll be reefing more often because your boat is more powered up, right? So if you have slivery hulls and you can put up a lot of sail in light air, the goal is to have a boat that is fairly close to wind speed, if you can get it, okay? It's very challenging when you get into the smaller hulls because people are displacing the same equipment on, say, the 464s are going to displace on the 502s, are going to displace on the 540, right? Same amount of refrigeration, water maker, same electronics, same, engines are relatively similar, right? So obviously, as you go up the balance range and length, you're going to get, the boats will be getting progressively a bit faster, right? It's probably the case with the 464, she'll be doing 85 to 90% of wind speed in light air, whereas the 502 will be fairly close to wind speed, in lighter when reaching. Right, when reaching.
Even so, you can tell that the shape of balance boats, which is obviously something that people identify immediately just from the way that they look.
Well, the forward facing wave piercing bow, we were one of the first companies to do that, in a production boat to, get that waterline, increase that waterline length without increasing a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Right. And also our transoms, you want transom immersion. A lot of people don't understand that you don't want a transom that comes out of the water. Okay. That actually creates more disturbance. What you want is a little bit of transom immersion. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, if you went back and looked at the old tornado catamarans that were our Olympic catamarans for years, the classic shape of that tornado catamaran and those sterns with a little bit of stern immersion hasn't changed in the performance space in terms of what really works. And you also have to have the right amount of rocker, and you have to position the buoyancy in your hulls where you need it, because what you're trying to do is reduce fore and aft pitching, and obviously to do that, when we're designing the boats, designed for performance, we're trying to center the heavy weights as much as we can around where the mast is. So where I'm sitting actually in the saloon of the boat, underneath me is all the batteries, right? I'm here in the center of the boat. You put those heavy batteries in the back of the cockpit, and, you're going to, you get this cantilever effect that starts to take place. Because of the cat, when it's moving, it's not going like this, like a monohull. It gets a gust and the sail takes it, but it's got this movement, right? So that's the movement that you want to try and reduce. And that's why sometimes our customers will opt to get high-tech rigging to lighten their rigging. And then others will sometimes order a carbon mast. But you're spending a lot of money to get a marginal performance gain and a slight reduction in pitching and stiffness. Because
exactly. Because these boats move. You add wind, they move. You're right, and you feel it. When you raise the sail, you just turn that, and we're going.
Yeah.
And I smiled earlier with what you were saying with some of those terminologies, because they're exactly the same in surfboards.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you ever go on long passage with one of these, that the surfing is just it's wonderful. It's a big part of balance. We don't talk about it often enough, but
that we're all surfers.
That we're all surfers, it's built into these boats.
It's so funny you mention that, and that I grew up in Southern California, so I started surfing when I was really young.
Yeah.
And how did I get my Hobie cat? Was I met Hobie at the very beginning. Hobie obviously was pioneer in surfboards and surfboard designs, and I became friends with Hobie, and then meeting your Uncle Jonathan with the Hobie World Championships here in South Africa in 79 and 80. And Johnny built a lot of those boats. We're surfers, we're water people, right? And it's interesting when you're talking about designing for performance and you talk to Johnny.
Well, that's it there.
Johnny understands foils, right? And he gets really excited over working with Anton on the Daggerboard shapes and then the rudder shapes, and because he understands, And what Johnny likes about a Daggerboard boat that a lot of people don't really fully appreciate, they think the Daggerboard is there because it helps you to windward, right? And it does a lot. Like if you want to go to windward, you got to have it, something like it, or a really, really deep, narrow keel. Okay. But what Johnny points out is when you're sailing off wind on a catamaran and you've got surf and the Daggerboards are mostly up, you're steering off the fin, right? Just like in a surfboard, right? And there's nothing like sailing off wind and a Daggerboarded cat because you're free, right? The keel cat is a stiff beast because you're riding on train tracks that don't allow you to slide. And the advantage of the Daggerboard too is that if you're in really big cross seas and you want to be a little bit safer, you can raise your leeward board up, put your windward board down a little bit, and then your boat will slide a little bit. But a lot of people don't understand this, that if you get stuck and you see winds coming in, you don't feel like you can reef really quickly, raise your leeward Daggerboard all the way, and you've taken in the first reef in the mainsail. That's almost the equivalent.
No, you can drift off and it takes that pressure off. You can feel it at the helm actually, and almost immediately. One of the fun things to do is when you've got the ASIM up, and ASIMs they like to like flap around a little bit on.
Because with the ASIM, if you start surfing, you speed up a lot.
That's it.
And so it'll luff a little bit, right? And then at the bottom, and then it picks up, and yeah.
But with the balance, with the steering being so, high performance, so you feel it. You can feel the way the boat goes. It's actually quite a pleasure to hand steer with an ASIM on these boats.
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
we did it I would say every time we had the ASIM up, everybody would take at least 20 minutes each to just for the pleasure of it, right?
Well, there you go. And it's kind of interesting because, like, when people are comparing catamarans and trying to decide, what boat is right for them, and, I'll talk to people, and the people that buy a Balance, they are cruisers. Most of them are cruisers. A lot of our people do come from racing backgrounds or monohull backgrounds or whatever, but
they're wanting to step back from that.
For them is an aesthetic, and it's a pleasure. And that's so when you want to sail and enjoy sailing, then the Balance will give you that. And as other performance cats will give you that. They'll give you that pleasure of sailing, Like my wife and I, we've had sailboats, and we have like a little motorboat now at our place in Connecticut, and my wife doesn't like motorboating. As far as she's concerned, it's just destination driven. It's not about the experience of being on the water and sailing. So so a part of the design of the Balance, when you're talking about design for performance, is the Daggerboards, the narrow hull shapes, proper transom immersion, the sail plan, the ease of the sail plan, the ability to power up and power down. Those are all a part of the overall design perspective.
We've already covered quite a few different things here, and I just want to take this moment to highlight again that when people use the word performance, it's always associated with going fast, and that's great, and we can. But what I like about what we're doing is we're almost setting a new frame for the word of performance, and that is ease and safety. And let's stay on ease. Something else that's very important here is the ease of movement, so ergonomics of the boat. I know that's something that's very important to you, not just on boats, but in life, just making things flow. You notice immediately on a Balance when you step on the deck, especially if you come from a monohull background, just the amount of space you have to move and the lack of tripping hazards.
It's huge. And getting up the steps from the cockpit up to the deck, having a relatively flat deck, not having a lot of deck hatches to trip on.
And they're very flat now on top of that.
But not having a bunch of obstructions, going up the deck, having triple height stanchions now on the boat to improve safety and everything, handholds along the sides of the coach roof. And the other one that's really important to me is bringing the trampoline up as close as possible to the decks, because I've sailed on lots of catamarans where they drop the trampoline down quite a bit from the deck. That's a complete tripping hazard, in my opinion. Now, especially at night when you can't see what's going on. So that's, obviously really important. We lower the boom really a lot on these boats. I just keep lowering it and lowering it and lowering
People
it.
always ask, "Oh, are you ever going to do a flybridge?" It's like, no. The boom's we're bringing the boom down. We're not pushing it up.
I'm bringing the boom down and cutting the clew of the sail a little higher, just so it will clear over the sun bimini when it's up.
Yeah.
Because it's great to be able to walk up on the deck, attach and detach the main halyard without climbing up a bunch of steps, and also to just unzip and zip the sail bag and get the sails in. It's great. I mean, speaking of fly bridges, when I sold used cats, anytime I got involved in a flybridge boat, I would invariably tell the buyer before he was getting the boat, if it was more than like 3 or 4 years old, I said, "You're going to have to replace your mainsail." And they go, "Well, why?" Because it'll be burnt at the top. And the reason it'll be burnt at the top is because it was too damn hard you'd have to climb up in the boom and shimmy out on your butt to zip and unzip the sail bag. And the law of sloth and torpor says that when it gets too hard, it ain't done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I saw that, on the flybridge boats.
For guys like you and me, we're pretty tall. It's 6'1" plus.
Yeah.
For us, we're actually bending down to the sail. But you can see with some other people on the team, Cameron's quite a bit shorter than me. And when he's up there, every now and again when they're testing the reefing lines and that, and they're working quickly, to try out the different things and see how fast they can do these operations. You get a little bit of spaghetti at the back there, but it's so easy to access and just pull those reefing lines through and keep it neat. But my point is that you can access that back area of the sail so easily, no matter what height you are. So
yeah, you can. And what it's interesting when you're talking about design and design for performance and function is that when we're working on the design of the boat, we are trying to figure out how can we make this boat functional for somebody that's 5 foot tall, around 5 foot tall, and on up to 6'10". Okay, like, because that's the range. Okay, and when you walk in a boat, you know, you see we have some people that own our boats that are 6 foot 10 inches tall, and they still can stand, you know, in the salon. It's very difficult on the smaller boats, so to bring that level of headroom down into the hulls, or else you increase the freeboard of the boat so much it becomes almost crazy. Yeah. The other thing that, you know, we had talked about earlier just together was from a design side is when you're going cruising on a boat, you're in far-flung places and you need to repair things and you need to maintain things and you need to be able to get to them. And so a huge thing for me and all of our team is making everything for repair accessible so that you don't have to become a contortion artist, you know, to take care of things. And so access to the steering systems, access to the tanks, access to the pumps, all
the batteries back here. It's just you just lean this forward and you're off to go.
And there it is, you know, and that's just a big part of, you know, our thing at Balance. Access to the electrical panels, the breaker systems, you know, those things just I think are critical really when you're on a cruising boat. And it's tough. You know, and the interesting thing is the smaller the boats, the harder it gets, right? Because you're working in tighter and tighter spaces. Yeah. But that is a big part of what I would call designing for performance.
Yeah. I think the steering one stands out there as a critical one to get to quickly, especially, you know, having the VersaHelm at its points there accessible from the aft,
well, you know,
the bathroom.
You've got a single sprocket at the top of the arm, and then it comes down, and then you've got a secondary sprocket next to it, and then a chain comes down into the aft starboard berth. Oh, well, it's actually usually the bathroom in our boat. And you can open up that cabinet,
one panel,
and then everything converts to Vectran cord or you know what high-tech line we're using going around sprockets. And so the way we design the boat is if you have any kind of steering problem, you can pull through a new cable if you need to, or, you know, sort that out. And that is a part of, you know, designing for performance.
Including the engine areas. Even on the smallest boats, you can get in there. Big guys can get in there. They can sit and you can turn around. You know, you're not forced to hang in and work on it. You can actually get inside and sit next to your engine and work on the rudder stock and all that at the back there. So, and
on the new 464 and the 502 and now also the 540, we have a stern door that it, you know, either will slide over or lift up. So on the 464 and the 502, it's basically a door that drops down over the existing engine hatch and you can lift up and attach instantly. And the advantage of that is that when you're at sea, it'll make it easier to keep big water, you know, coming into the back of the boat. It'll make the cockpit really secure. But when it's down, it's going to really dampen the sound of the motors when you're motoring, because it'll be that insulation over the top of the existing engine hatch, which I think is going to be really neat. I can't wait to get a dB meter out and test the sound. It's great. The more silent a boat is. And it's been interesting on the new E-drives. We've tested the first 526 and now here we've got a 482, how quiet they are really when you're coming in and out of a harbor.
Okay, well, we've spoken about the design elements here, and you've touched on it earlier, like, how does that differ from the actual build? What does it mean to build for performance? And I think we're going to make that in a separate video, which we'll link to at the end of this one, because there is a difference, right, between designing something and then getting to the factory floor and going, okay, how do we make this happen? So things are easy to access inside the boat, which is amazing that we've managed to do that and build a comfortable boat to be in. I've spent quite a few nights aboard all different sizes now of Balance boats, and it really does capture that feeling of being in a home. And I think while that sounds like it's not part of the performance conversation, I do believe that it is.
Sure, I think it's a huge part of performance. A boat that doesn't provide you with the amount of cabinetry and storage space to put your stuff and to live an organized life. And there's nothing worse than being on a boat that's just, you can't get to things and that it becomes a junkyard. I mean, when you actually think about a lot of the smaller charter cats, the whole middle of each hull is taken up with toilets and showers, okay? And there's almost no storage or cabinetry. Well, that's fine in a charter where it's a 1 week charter where everybody's drinking pina coladas, and by the end of the week, they don't care about the fact that their clothing is on the floor and there's crap everywhere, you know. But when you're living on a boat, this is where the tools are, and this is where, you know, this is. And I think that's really important. One of the things that we do at Balance, as you know, on our website is we actually advertise and show how much exterior deck storage volume you get on a Balance and how much interior cubic space you get inside the boat for cabinetry. People ought to compare us to others in that sense, because Balance isn't, I don't want our boats to be a junkyard. Like I really want them to be, you know, super livable. And of course that goes to that whole thing of, well, you're building a performance boat, so how do you do that? Well, you build the cabinetry as light as you can, right? Foam core and all that sort of thing. But it is true that if you want to force people into a performance diet, don't give them cabinetry.
That's true, yeah.
Just don't give it to them, you know? Like I've often joked, we could build, there was a French builder that, you know, built these, you know, performance cats, and you went inside and there was like no cabinetry in this boat at all. And what cabinetry there was like really light and flimsy. And I said, well, we could build that kind of boat. It costs us a lot less money, and yeah, it would be faster, but it wouldn't be a great boat to live on.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
like Pascal's principle, you know, something will expand to the space you give it or the time you give it.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. So we give a lot. But the nice thing about that is everything has a designated home. You're not doubling up a space for a temporary use. It's things live where they live because you have that space. And what I noticed is for example, you'll need a soft shackle, or you need, you know, something that you need quickly because you're going to change something. You know where they live, so you're not rushing and looking. They're here, or they're there.
Out in a bin, and
So what happens is you're able to move more slowly. You know, the expression is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That is true on a Balance, is because you're able to move through the spaces without rushing through them. You're moving slowly, but you're getting to where you need to be quickly. There's a handrail where you need it. You can operate in a relaxed manner through this boat in a fast way. And I think that people who race boats, they know their boat blind because they've got to act on that. And you do that naturally on a Balance. You get to feel your way through this boat.
I feel that that's true. And you know, I'm sitting here obviously in the salon of the 442, and the way we've designed this for people that want, well, you can drop this table down and add in cushions, and this becomes like a really great place to sleep and live is an important design function. Looking across at the galley, you know, the way we design the galley, we spend hours thinking about like how, because it's tough, you know, in a catamaran to get enough storage for the galley and that sort of thing. And it's why I always use the Daggerboard trunks in each boat in front of those to become a pantry, because the Daggerboard angles, right?
Yeah.
So the shelves get larger and larger as we go up in those pantries, but in that pantry you can get all your canned goods and everything, and it becomes really easy to function, you know.
Yeah, and it's quick access, you know, right here.
Exactly. Yeah, so
right there.
All those things are, you know, really thought through on the Balance.
And when you're on long passage, you do live up here, right? That's it's comfortable, it's nice. You're always moving, and I think almost every single Balance owner that I have spoken to has this as the bed setup on a long passage.
You're right.
It's more than comfortable enough you're doing your dinners outside most nights.
Most nights you're eating outside.
It doesn't matter, even when it's raining or whatnot,
right.
You're out there, you're having dinner out there.
That's why I actually re-emphasized in the new models, making the salon more loungy a little bit, like more like a couch, because people are dining here less than they're lounging here and hanging out. And for the coffee table to become a real coffee table, you know, kind of thing.
On Anchor, it changes up, obviously.
That's right.
But you have that option to change between the two. But from a performance standpoint, it makes passage making really
It's really interesting
comfortable.
you mentioned at anchor, because when you think about it, operating the boat underway and design for performance underway, and then there's design for performance at the dock or at the anchor. Okay. And one of the things that's really fascinating about boat shows is that the people that are walking in and out of the boats, the only thing that they're really getting to understand from a design perspective is how this thing operates at anchor or at a dock.
Yeah.
And they're not experiencing how it moves through the water or how you make it move through the water, which is interesting. It's like, I've always had this joke about boat shows. I used to always say that it's about the corian, not the core, right? So the boat shows all the visuals, but you've got to move this beast through the water, right? And, when at anchor, if all you were doing was anchoring, you wouldn't build a performance catamaran. You would just build the widest possible hulls that you could, and you wouldn't worry about underbridge deck slamming, and you wouldn't worry about getting from place to place. You wouldn't worry about conserving on fuel consumption. Like, all those considerations go out the door, right? And if you think about it, like, if you are optimizing a boat for charter, and we don't build charter boats at Balance, if we did, we wouldn't build this boat. We wouldn't build this boat.
And conversely, if you were building a boat for racing, you would just longer hulls, make them narrower, I mean, there you go.
I mean, if you were building a boat for racing and it was just a bunch of people that didn't really care about comfort, then you'd strip
everything.
Most
they
of
do.
the cabinetry. And
I
was talking to this one guy, and he was racing a gunboat or something. He says, we used to remove the air conditioning units before we were racing. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Really? I don't think
I've heard some stories too about things that get removed. But I agree with you. What would be ideal one day is if we could have some kind of simulator at a boat show where people, what they get to do is cook some spaghetti or rice as if you were on passage, and see how comfortable it is on these boats. I mean, we've cooked on 3 meter swells,
Cats
25 knots
good that
in
way.
general.
They're really good
but
that way.
it's so comfortable to cook. It's actually a pleasure. We were often fighting over who's going to cook. I'll take it. No, my night. So it's, that's already a sign of the comfort of being out there in the open ocean. These boats are definitely, they're all the experience of real sailors goes into the design. You've spearheaded that and collected a group of very experienced people over the years. Jonathan Paarman, Mark Delaney. There's so many people. It's hard to grasp that.
Yeah. Well, we're here in Cape Town, so I think in a day or so I'm having another meeting with sailmaker, spar maker, designers, commissioning guy, and all we do is walk over the boat and talk.
Yeah.
What could we do better?
Yeah.
What could we change? It's a constant effort to innovate and be better and do better, and it's all the little details that just keep adding up to a great product. But I did want to if I could just help finish up here, is that you made the point that these are homes, right? These are people's homes, and you want them to feel like a home. You want to be able to walk in and feel like a home. You want to be proud of your home, how it looks from the outside, how it looks and feels from the inside. And one thing that is cool about Balance is that we design for performance, but we also design to allow our customers to choose their fabrics, their wood veneers, their flooring. They can personalize their boat like no other builder, really. I think that's a neat part of the brand.
Absolutely. And being based here in Cape Town at the waterfront and just outside of the waterfront, we have all these different design shops and that. And that's a big part of the experience, is to come here and we give you so many options already, and then you come and add your touches on top of that. It really becomes a home.
Every time I'm in Cape Town, I always say to myself, if people that were buying catamarans knew what it was like, the experience to get a boat here in Cape Town with us, and what the places to go, the things to do, the wine country, the Cape tours, the nice people, what a great place this is, to get a boat. And interestingly, here we are, we're in the middle of winter for you, sunny outside, we're in t-shirts, which doesn't mean we don't have some rainy cold fronts come through, But year round, we can launch boats and sail the boats north, which you can't do in very many places. So, yeah.
Even when you leave Cape Town on passage, it's only the first 2 days that are a little bit chilly. And then you start entering the southern tropics area already.
Within a few days, you're getting into the warm weather. Yeah. All right.
So design, that was design for performance. In this next video, we're going to go a little bit more into the details of building for performance. So taking these ideas that we've spoken about and translating them into the factory floor and what happens there. So if you're interested in that, then click onto this end card here and watch the next video in this series.
And stay in balance until then.